Quiet. Damn it! Tell me I'm stupid again. We're walking. Everybody get on the fucking ground! Get on the fucking...
The story kicks off in a quiet little town in West Texas, just as the sun starts creeping up. Outside the Texas Midland Bank, a female employee is getting ready for a shift when suddenly, two guys in masks and regular clothes burst in. Armed and clearly up to no good, they shove her inside and demand she opens the cash drawers. She calmly tells them there's no money in there yet, and even has the nerve to mock them, saying they must be new at this if they thought robbing a bank before opening hours was a smart idea. Her sarcasm doesn't sit well with them, and one of them pushes her down near the counter. Still, she lets them know that the only way they're getting any cash is if they stick around until the bank manager arrives at 8:30 a.m. When the manager finally shows up, he's greeted with a gun in his face. One of the robbers doesn't hesitate to hit him before they grab whatever they can and take off in a car. These two aren't just any criminals, they're brothers. Tanner Howard, the older one, has just gotten out of prison and has a history of trouble. The younger one, Toby Howard, has no criminal record and isn't too happy with Tanner's rough approach, especially hitting the manager. But they don't have time to argue. They've got another bank to hit. Their next target is another Texas Midland bank branch in a different small town. Inside, an elderly man is showing a teller some old coins he found in his barn, hoping they're worth something. She's in the middle of checking them out when the Howard brothers storm in. Tanner demands that the teller opens the cash drawer, but only takes the small bills, leaving the larger ones behind to avoid suspicion. Meanwhile, Toby notices the old man is carrying a gun. He calmly takes it and places it on the counter. The old man, clearly confused, asks if they're robbing him personally. Toby assures him it's just the bank they're after. As the brothers make their escape, the old man retrieves his gun and fires at them. Toby, frustrated, insists they need to stick to his plan to avoid situations like this in the future. Back at their ranch, the brothers take their getaway car, drive it into a big hole, and bury it using a backhoe to cover their tracks. Meanwhile, Texas Ranger Marcus Hamilton and his partner, Alberto Parker, get assigned to the case. Marcus, an older lawman close to retirement, sees this case as one last adventure before he's forced to hang up his badge. Alberto, a younger ranger with Mexican and Native American roots, often trades playful insults with Marcus, who has no problem dishing out old-school jabs about his partner's heritage. Despite the robberies, the FBI isn't involved since the amount stolen is only around $7,000, leaving the Texas Rangers in charge. At the brothers' ranch, Tanner takes in how run-down the place is. Toby explains that he's been caring for their sick mother in her final months before she recently passed. Tanner, feeling guilty for not being around, sees the old hospital bed and leftover medicine in her room. He admits that if he'd known, he would have helped, but instead, he got roped into this whole bank robbing mess. When Tanner asks about a will, Toby tells him the ranch is technically his, until Friday when the bank is set to foreclose on it. Tanner, reminiscing about how much their mother disliked him, even suggests that maybe he killed their father. Over at the first bank, Marcus and Alberto investigate, only to find that the security cameras were down due to recent upgrades. They don't get a solid description of the robbers, but Marcus quickly notes they seem careful and not like the usual desperate criminals strung out on drugs. Meanwhile, the Howard brothers stop at a diner in another town. While eating, Tanner asks Toby about his kids and learns they don't even know their grandmother passed away since he hasn't been in touch much. Tanner urges him to visit them. As they eat, Tanner notices yet another Texas Midland bank across the street. Without warning, he leaves Toby to pay the bill and goes to rob it. Toby, completely unaware at first, ends up chatting with the waitress, revealing that he used to work in the natural gas industry before losing his job. The waitress flirts a bit, mentioning they could use a cook at the diner. Toby, feeling generous, leaves her a huge tip before walking outside, only to find Tanner casually strolling out of the bank he just robbed. Furious, Toby chews him out, reminding him that this wasn't part of their plan. Even worse, the bank wasn't even a Texas Midland branch, making things more complicated. Tanner, however, doesn't seem to care. On their way back to their office, Marcus and Alberto get news of Tanner's latest stunt and immediately turn around. As they drive, they run into a group of ranchers herding their cattle away from a prairie fire. One of the ranchers, clearly beaten down by life, bitterly suggests just letting the fire take him and his herd. Marcus, understanding the struggles of people in these parts, comments on how many folks out here are left to fend for themselves, just like the Howard brothers. Meanwhile, Toby and Tanner stop at Tanner's trailer, where he stays in exchange for shooting coyotes. Tanner grabs some rifles, and though Toby isn't thrilled about it, he doesn't argue. They then head across the border into Oklahoma and stop at a gas station. While Toby goes inside to grab some snacks, a car with loud music pulls up. The driver locks eyes with Tanner and starts acting cocky, even flashing a pistol. Tanner, unfazed, gives a chilling warning. Just think, there's 10 more like me out there. Toby comes back just in time to see the driver push his luck too far, and without hesitation, he beats the guy down. The passenger, watching all this unfold, simply shrugs and admits his friend had it coming. Tanner, amused, teases Toby for getting the wrong drink. Back on the case, Marcus and Alberto interview the bank teller from the latest robbery and confirm that only one robber was inside while the other waited in the getaway car. They then stop by the diner, questioning the waitress and other customers. Marcus asks for the $200 tip Toby left, saying it could be used as evidence, but the waitress refuses, saying she needs that money to keep a roof over her kids' heads. Marcus, knowing she won't budge, tells Alberto to book them a motel nearby, convinced the robbers aren't done yet. Meanwhile, the Howard brothers head to an Indian casino where they can easily launder their stolen cash. Tanner, ever the risk taker, plays poker while Toby sticks to the bar, holding onto a big stack of chips. Tanner ends up in a heated exchange with a Comanche man and learns that Comanche translates to enemy of all. A prostitute approaches Toby at the bar, but before she gets far, Tanner shoos her away. Eventually, they cash out, with Toby converting most of the winnings into a check made out to Texas Midland Bank. They check into a hotel, where Tanner immediately starts flirting with the receptionist. Later, as Toby tries to sleep, he has to endure the awkward reality of Tanner loudly enjoying his time with her in the next bed over, making it clear their journey is far from over. Marcus and Alberto are chilling in front of the TV, but Marcus can't resist throwing more jabs at Alberto. It's clear that Alberto's feelings are hurt, but he doesn't say much. Later that night, Marcus wakes up, restless over his impending retirement. Alberto tries to reassure him, but Marcus just brushes it off with more teasing. The next day, the brothers buy an old pickup truck for their next job. Toby takes a detour to visit his ex-wife and kids, telling his oldest son that the family ranch will be put in a trust for him and his uncle. He also lets him in on a big secret. The land is oil. He warns his son that people will talk about him and Tanner, and while the stories might be true, he shouldn't follow in their footsteps. Meanwhile, Marcus and Alberto are staking out another Texas Midland bank from a diner across the street. The waitress doesn't even ask what they want. She just decides for them. Across town, the brothers meet with their lawyer, who tells them they need 40 grand by Thursday to keep the bank from taking the ranch. The lawyer actually supports their plan, pointing out the irony of robbing Texas Midland to pay Texas Midland back. He also advises them to let the bank manage the trust for extra cover. As Marcus and Alberto wait outside the bank, Alberto comments on how the land used to belong to the Comanche before settlers took it, and now it's the bank stripping people of their property. While Marcus keeps watch, Alberto heads into a hotel to rest. The brothers gear up for what they hope is their last job. Their first target is shut down permanently, throwing them off. They pivot to another location, but Tanner insists they hit a bigger bank in post. Toby hesitates, but goes along with it. They park their truck on the town's outskirts and move in. Marcus and Alberto study a map, narrowing down the list of potential targets. One is too big, two have already been hit, one is closed, and they're watching another, leaving post as the most likely target. As they drive toward town, Toby and Tanner are already inside, carrying out their heist. Tanner rounds up the cash, while Toby keeps an eye on the customers. But then things go south. Someone secretly sends a text, and suddenly, a bank customer and a security guard pull their weapons. Tanner reacts fast, shooting them both, and the brothers make a run for it. A mob of armed locals chase after them. Toby takes a hit, but it's just a scratch. Tanner floors it, gets some distance, then hops out with an M16, firing enough rounds to scare off the angry townsfolk. He helps Toby into another car and sends him off to an Indian casino in Oklahoma, giving him one last nod before parting ways. It's clear Tanner knows his time is up. Marcus and Alberto hear about the robbery and join a group of troopers in pursuit. Tanner makes his last stand on a hill, taking shots at the cops with a rifle. In the chaos, Alberto is hit in the head and killed, leaving Marcus visibly shaken. The townspeople show up, wanting revenge, and Marcus convinces one of them to help him find a clear shot at Tanner. Using a borrowed rifle, Marcus takes Tanner down for good. Meanwhile, Toby carefully avoids a police roadblock by keeping his injury hidden and playing it cool. He makes it to the casino and watches the news, his face heavy with grief over his brother's fate. Still, he follows through with the plan, heading to Texas Midland Bank to settle the debt on the ranch. The bank manager tries to brush him off, but Toby insists everything gets processed immediately before he leaves. Before walking out, he also asks about their trust management services. Back at the Texas Rangers office, Marcus is officially retired, though his old co-workers still greet him with respect. He learns the case is closed. Tanner's criminal record is enough to blame him for everything, and nobody wants to go after Toby. With the land now producing oil, Toby is making more money every month than he ever stole. Marcus is told to let it go and enjoy retirement, but he can't shake the feeling that there's unfinished business. Driven by lingering doubts, Marcus visits Toby at the ranch. Toby meets him with a rifle in hand, but doesn't turn him away. They sit and share a beer, tension thick in the air. Marcus accuses Toby of orchestrating everything and says Tanner did it for the thrill. He demands to know why Toby went through with it, holding him responsible for the bloodshed. Toby calmly explains that his family had lived in poverty for generations, and he did what he had to do to ensure his kids would never go through the same struggles. The conversation gets heated, and for a moment, it seems like they might reach for their guns. But before anything can happen, Toby's ex-wife and kids arrive. Toby quickly hides the rifle, making up an excuse about wild hogs. He introduces Marcus as an old friend, keeping things cordial in front of his family. He tells Marcus they can finish their conversation another time, but Marcus doubts it will bring either of them peace. The film ends with shots of the ranch, the oil pumps churning away, ensuring the land's prosperity for future generations. The message is clear. If you're going to rob banks to save your family's land, make sure you cover your tracks, watch out for wild hogs, and never underestimate the power of an oil well.